Well, well, well. If it isn't Jim's boy, Melvin.
Hey everyone, I'm Adam and welcome to the KreatureKid channel and the making of Melvin, our newest fine art piece for Hunter. If you remember previously, if you look back at our videos, our first fine art piece for Hunter was Cats from Monster Lab.
There he is. God, I feel like a father meeting his son for the first time, like out of prison or something like that. Can I touch him?
Yeah,
can I
go
and
for
talk?
it.
Oh my god.
Yeah. I mean, don't hug him.
Holy. Oh my god, he's so great. Holy shit, look at him. My beautiful boy. It's weird seeing like the 2D designs come to life in person.
That was a beautiful piece. We spent about a year or so, maybe a bit more, working on that piece, but it came out beautifully. And shortly after that, we were tasked to build Melvin.
Baby gets what baby wants.
A nice christening.
So when it comes to the fine art pieces, I like to take my time. There's a big difference between a display piece and a piece for a video or a movie or something like that. For a fine art piece, the materials have to be thought out a lot differently, how we go about building it, all the stuff we use and how we construct it. We have to keep in mind, how does this thing last 20 years? How is it gonna withstand sun exposure? You know, when we make a puppet, we have to maintain it, right? We have to have access to mechanics inside, or if it's foam latex, after every day we're touching up tears and stuff. But this is what you would see at a museum, kind of upping the game a little bit on quality and durability. We were kind of in the early stages still of the shop, before a lot of the 3D printing kind of started kicking in. I was just kind of basic Form Labs resin printing, which is crazy expensive and small. And also with the fine art pieces, I like to take a bit more of a traditional route, at least for the heads. Kind of like my Grunkle stand, like my cats. Something about seeing a sculpture that has that hand sculpted aesthetic to it. Kind of appreciate a bit more. Melvin is an interesting example of traditional combined with digital as the evolution of him was being built over the duration of the 3 years. First step was sculpt his head. So we started just like Cats, building a giant T wood armature on a huge base, slapping hundreds of pounds of wet clay together to make a giant Melvin-sized head. It just started evolving from there of how big his eyes are, how to translate this character's head and face into clay, which is always tricky with cartoon characters because in every episode he's like different expressions, or his ears are changing positions, his eyes are kind of like feeling a little heavier, you know, hanging down, or sometimes they're a little perkier. So it's kind of trying to get the vibe of Melvin when you look at him. So the sculpting process was probably 6 months long. I also really wanted to somehow incorporate the evil Melvin side. If you watch the Melvin show on the Meat Canyon channel, he kind of has split personalities, 2 different facial expressions.
Loser! Loser!
What I ended up thinking of is if the head can rotate, that just doubled up my sculpture. I was pretty happy with what we landed on. Melvin is meant to be seen in person. Hunter is our audience. The stuff we do for films is a lot of times not as sharp as far as details are. There's a lot of things that can be hidden. With this, you're getting up close. You're looking at the pores on the face, and you're looking at the tear ducts, and you're looking inside the mouth, right? Like on Grunkle Stan, you got his little eye boogies in his eyes, and you got blackheads, and you got nose hairs. And on Cats, you got the cavities in his teeth. All these little details everywhere. So with Melvin, obviously pores everywhere, fine wrinkles and textures and all kinds of things. So as a whole, he just feels much more complete. Once we finish the textures and pores and all this fine stuff, then we go into mold making. Now this guy, I really wanted to avoid seam lines. As nice as we can get with patching, if we put a seam line here, you're still having to reconstruct the details of the pores, or whoever's seaming has to match the textures that you did on the sculpture. We ended up just doing a giant 2-part fiberglass mold, evil Melvin on one side, regular Melvin on the other side, and just wrestling this sculpture apart, which was brutal. For this also, his ears are always separate, right? We cut his little ears off and we sculpt those separately, and then we glue and patch them back on because they're so sticking out so far. We couldn't get them in the mold. We also incorporated resin eyes with little bolts in the molds so that we have perfect sockets for the dimensions of our eyes being made. Now for our eyes, we went to Fourth Seal Studios. Like we always do, they are the best at eyeballs. What was kind of fun is Melvin has two different eyes, right? He's got regular Melvin eyes and he's got evil Melvin eyes. And like in the show, evil Melvin's irises and pupils like shrink, and normally Melvin's eyes are really big and kind of doe-eyed. We had a lot of fun playing with different eyes. And also what was really exciting about this is that the character is fully black and white. So they had to use only grays and blacks and whites and stuff to make these eyes, right? No color. But you need to have the hues of gray veins going everywhere and all kinds of stuff. So that was a really fun and challenging part of this character, is how do you make a character fully black and white? For painting the Melvin head, again, we're only using grays and a little bit of brown maybe to make it feel a little lifelike, but it's just grays, blue grays, brown grays, blacks, and just kind of painting them all in gray tone. And then when moving on to hair, we sourced some black wigs where we were taking the black hair from Melvin. And it was interesting because obviously it's two different styles on either side of the head. So we had to kind of just make a little strip of hair that can kind of like look fine from one side and look good from the other side, and you don't really notice that the hair's sticking up in the back of his head. But since it's just such a narrow strip, we couldn't really glue any of the hair on, so we had to punch all the hair up on that head. And also for his eyelashes, Mariah Keirns here had to punch all those eyelashes in on both sides. It took forever, but it came out beautifully. The teeth for Melvin were 3D printed, his little sharp teeth. And then we paint and automotive finish and glue all the sharp teeth in with silpoxy.
You look like a gross fucking idiot in front of Angela!
Now for Melvin's body, this was a hard one. We started traditionally carving him out of yellow foam, obviously before all the 3D printer stuff was kind of popping at the shop. And there's a specific bench that Hunter has with an old Ronald McDonald sitting on it.
Trying to buy one of those Ronald McDonald sitting bench statues. And you can help me do that, and I can help you get something that you want, I guess.
He wanted Melvin sitting on the bench eating a burger. The trouble is, the bench is contoured in a specific way. It's not like a flat bench. There's a dip to it. There's a curve to it. So that means his butt has to fit on this bench. His pose, something felt off about it. And when something feels off, that usually is a sign that this isn't the direction I should be going. We had the head done, and we were struggling with the digital body. I tried sculpting Melvin digitally. I took some measurements, and we kind of reconstructed the bench and the computer, and we were kind of like trying to get Melvin going, and it just wasn't looking right. I printed the body, and it was too small, and it looked weird. It just kind of looked lifeless. And then I was like, we got to get the head sculpture in there. We just took general measurements of his head. But I've already printed this body twice and it's wrong. I think it's just I need to see what the sculpture is in order to properly sculpt the body. So what we ended up doing is we ended up getting a 3D scanner. With that, we're able to place the head to scale on the body, see what's working and what's not. You look at this character standing and he's got such weird proportions. He's got weird little nubby legs that wouldn't really work in a bench. Again, because it's a cartoon, when Melvin's sitting, you don't really see him sitting, or when he is sitting, his legs are drawn differently than they are when he's standing. So we have to kind of create the in-between of what's his legs where they actually could sit on a bench and they look normal, compared to if he were to stand up, would he look similar enough to the illustrations of Melvin standing? So it's a weird kind of balance to really just sell the vibe of Melvin, but not be 100% show accurate. So once we have the digital head and we could see the body and we could see the portions, what we ended up also doing is scanning the bench and modeled that. So we have there's our exact bench on where he's sitting, how it curves. So we outsourced Melvin's body and hands and shoes and stuff to a wonderful sculptor, Frederico Gallo. And what was wonderful about this is it doesn't matter where the sculptor's at. Digitally, the sculptor can work with our 3D scan of our traditionally sculpted head, our 3D scan of the bench that's sitting at Hunter's place, and we can then work on sculpting the body and the shoes and the hands and kind of bringing them back up. With the sculptor's help, we can get the body and we can hone in the anatomy and the hand expressions and how his shoes look and kind of what I envisioned for his shoes and the wear and tear and stuff and how we plan on designing them so real laces can be put on, how the body should be sculpted in order for clothing to lay on top of it, and also how the head is going to spin for his big ears to clear his shoulders. How's it going to function? So with all this back and forth with the sculptor, we land on the final design of here is Melvin. There he is digitally. We have his head sitting on a table covered in a bag, done already. We have the bench, done. So then we just 3D print his body in sections. We cube it all up, print it in blocks on the Bamboo Lab P1S, which is PLA filament, glue it all together, and then just make it durable because filament, in the end, it's just plastic. It's gonna fall apart. It doesn't have a life to it, but it's our shape. So what we do is we coated the 3D print in resin and did a couple layers of fiberglass on top, essentially just making it a fiberglass mannequin that can hold the weight, that can be durable, it will not fall apart over time, and you could drop him and he'll be fine. The challenge now is how do you costume this little guy? So before we glue the hands and shoes on, we got to get our costuming on because we need the pants to fit around the ankles, we need the shirt to fit around the wrists. So we opted to get the costuming on first and then carefully attach the hands and attach the shoes. So we went to an amazing costume designer, Kitty Krell, and she sourced gray pants and a gray sweater and the collar and tailored this to fit this weird little proportioned body perfectly. With the collar attached to the shirt and the cuffs, so you have the dark gray cuffs on the light gray shirt, and adding a hem to the pants, so the pants fit perfectly, so he looks like he's in goofy little Melvin pants.
No, don't take that off!
My titties!
No, don't touch me there!
His hands, we engineered block molds. We knew his hands are basically solid silicone, but we needed structure inside because he's holding a cheeseburger. And we don't want like jiggly little rubber fingers. Once we close the molds of the PLA filament and we have our silicone brushed in, a little bit of terry cloth, and we have our armature wires in the fingers, what we ended up doing is just filling it up with Habitat casting coat from Smooth On. And this just turns our hands into just little resin blocks with a skin of silicone. This will prevent movement. It just locks the silicone in place to just last for years to come. And then we just ran a little armature wire out of his wrist, and that's what we will resin cast those armature wires inside of the mannequin arms, making him a complete whole. For Melvin's shoes, we tried printing them out of resin, but the size just called for us having to split the shoes up a bunch to start printing sections, even on our Allegro Jupiter 3D printer. The shoes are just huge. So what we ended up doing is just printing them in two parts out of PLA, gluing them together, patching them up, and then again, we cannot have 3D printed filament as a final product. So we make giant block molds using Mold Max XLS of the 3D printed shoes, and then we rotocast black Smooth On 300 resin, making it nice and durable, casting it in black resin, so if he gets scratched up or if someone scuffs his shoes, it's not gonna remove paint and show a different color underneath, it's just gonna be black. And then foam filling the shoes with Foam It 3, a dense, somewhat lightweight, rigid foam. So that way we have foam filled resin cast shoes that aren't gonna break, and if you're careful, they'll last forever. And once we paint our shoes and we paint our hands and we polish everything up, our shoes we finish with automotive once we're done with matte automotive, so that prevents, again, any more scuffs and things. And then we lace actual shoelaces into them. Now we very carefully use Smoothcast 300 to lock in the wrists wires of the hands so that those don't go anywhere, and the resin is filled up inside of his forearm there. And then we used Plexus, a very strong, durable dental acrylic resin, along with drilling holes in the shoes to really give the glue something to grip onto, so you can't go knocking one of those shoes off unless it just tears the resin apart. And after that, Melvin's basically done. Because the weight of the head, his head probably weighs 15 pounds. We had to weigh the bottom of Melvin's body. You can't have a head heavier than the body, especially because his head is just on a pole and you have to manually spin it. Hidden inside Melvin's butt, we printed his butt hollow, and we just stuck a set of 5-pound dumbbells and I think a 5-pound plated weight as well. And then we just pour rigid foam around these weights so that Melvin's body weighs 25 pounds. And then you stick a 15-pound head on there. It ain't gonna rock. No matter what kind of rumbling happens, or if you bump him, he's not gonna move. It's like a little person sitting on that bench. That was a great solution with how to make this thing not move without having to bolt him to the bench, which we did not want to do, because this bench is a piece of McDonald's history and we have to preserve that. Melvin can now rest beautifully on this bench and be enjoyed and manipulated to have his face's changing expressions whenever. He can live a happy life eating his burger in fear or in anger next to Ronald McDonald's, and we're really proud of this piece, and we are so happy that Hunter had us do this and was patient enough to work with us on this piece of art that KreatureKid brought to life. So thank you guys for watching. Please leave a comment down below if you have any questions on materials or steps. We try to cover everything, but you know, as you can see in this video, there's a million steps and a million solutions that need to be figured out when building something like this. So thank you guys for watching.
Boom, Melvin, done.
Thank you.